everybody, it's Jamie from Preschool. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you had a great weekend. We are counting down really toward the end of the school year. Do you guys finish pretty soon or do you go all year? We finish on June 9th, so this is the beginning of our last 3 weeks of school. And because of the holiday next week, and we only see our kids either 2 or 3 days a week, we only have like a handful of days with each class, which doesn't feel like enough time. Anyway, if you finish soon, let me know how you're hanging in there. And if you go all year, let me know your tricks, because I don't know if I could do that. This afternoon, I thought I would chat with you about a question that comes up pretty often when I talk with other teachers, when I talk with exasperated parents, when I talk with my own husband. And the question is, why are the kids doing that? Sometimes, of course, there's no answer other than they're wound up. But a lot of times when we're thinking about children's behavior and we're perplexed by why are they acting this way, why are they doing that, that the answer to our question a lot of times can be found in their development, in research about child development. So specifically today, I thought that we could chat about, hey Kirsten, hey Brittany, thanks for joining me. We could specifically chat about this one area of child development that I think affects a lot of the behaviors that we see in a preschool classroom, and that's egocentrism. So that is, of course, a term that was coined by Piaget, who's a great child development, philosopher. If you have not studied child development, start with Piaget, I would say. And Piaget said that children in preschool, ages 2 through 6 or 7, are egocentric. And sometimes when we hear the word, oh, he's got such a big ego, he's so egocentric, it means selfish. But that's not exactly the way that Piaget meant it. Preschoolers who are egocentric means that in terms of their brain development, they are only able to see the world through their own vision, their own perception of the world. That preschoolers, hey Pam, hey everybody, hey Erica, thanks for joining me. Preschoolers, ages 2 through 6 or 7, have a very difficult time understanding the world from somebody else's point of view. It doesn't mean that they're selfish or, they've got somewhat of a personality deficit. It really just means that their brains are not yet able to see things from any other vantage point other than their own. And so I wanted to share 4 examples from my own preschool classroom of ways that egocentrism shows itself and makes us kind of scratch our heads and be like, yeah, why are you doing that? So 2 silly examples first, and then 2 more serious examples second. So hi there, they do loop back around to the teens. I've got 2 of those as well. That's so fun, isn't it, Jess? Okay, so here's 2 silly examples, and then I'm going to give you 2 more, I think, serious examples of behaviors that make us really scratch our heads and say, why are they acting like that, or why can't they do this or that? So here's the first silly example. Have you ever tried to play hide and seek with a 3-year-old? I have, all the time. And if you've ever noticed the way that a 3-year-old plays hide and seek, if you're the seeker and they're hiding, a lot of times they will hide like this, right? They might even put their head under a blanket or tuck their head under, hide their head, right? The rest of their body is laying out so that you can see it. And the reason that this is a good hiding spot for a 3-year-old is because they are egocentric, because they can only understand the world from how they see it. And from how they see it, they can't see you. They can't see anything. Their head is hidden, so you can't see them, right? And so think about that, how they can only understand what they can see through their own eyes, not through what you can see through your eyes. And so if their head is hidden, then they think they're hidden. They can't understand that you can see their legs and feet and body, because they can't see you. So obviously you can't see them. And it starts, age 2, it's funny to play hide and seek with a 2 or early 3. They're starting to get better at it, of course, as they mature, but that's one of the ways that egocentrism sort of shows itself in a very funny way with our youngest students. Here's another kind of funny example. My preschool is at my house. And of course, I'm downstairs at school, I'm the teacher, but my students know, 3, 4, 5, they know that upstairs I have a family, right? And a lot of them, all of them, will say, especially if my husband, it's like going into work late, or we've got somebody, fixing something in the house and he's up there, he'll be like, is your dad home? And they're like, yeah, my husband, Mr. Joe, he's home. But another example is if one of my kids is homesick and they're like, is your sister up there? And it's because they're egocentric. Because in their family, in their house, the grown-up man is the dad. In their family, in their house, the grown-up kid who goes to school on the bus is the sister, right? And they can't understand how the grown-up in my house isn't my dad, because that's a different relationship than they have with the grown-up man in their house, right? And so a lot of times preschoolers will say things like, is your brother home? Or I saw your brother at the store. One of the kids, I saw your brother at this baseball the other day. I'm like, he's not really my brother. He's really my son. But they can't understand that because in their house, their brother was at the baseball field. The big kid who goes on the bus, that's the brother, right? And so they can't understand how that would be different for me, having a different relationship with those people who live in my house, because they're egocentric. So those are two kind of funny examples of how students are very egocentric. But here are two more examples of how that egocentrism sort of rears its ugly head, so to speak, in preschool. The first example is kids are gonna fight. Becky Bailey from Conscious Discipline says that there is an altercation, some kind of a conflict in preschool with kids ages 3 to 5, 1 every minute. And that means if you're with your kids for 3 hours, that's 180. I'm thinking 3.5 hours. 180 conflicts, right? They're like always butting heads. And as teachers, sometimes we're tempted to say, how do you think that makes Johnny feel when you snatch from him? And the kids are like, I never even thought to think how Johnny feels, because in my world, it really only matters how I feel. I feel good because I wanted that toy, so I took it. It feels good. Why doesn't Johnny feel good? It's really hard for children to understand how another child would feel about a circumstance if it's different from how they feel about it, because they cannot see the world through somebody else's eyes. And so we have to teach them to do that, though. We can't just say, they're going to be egocentric forever, right? They're never going to be able to understand how somebody else feels due to their actions. And so the way we have to do it is to not say, how do you think he feels? Because they're like, I only know how I feel. I can't imagine how somebody else feels in a circumstance. And so we have to say things like, I see Johnny's face. He's like, he's mad. Or, he's crying. I can see, I'm looking at Johnny and I say, Johnny feels sad. And we start to give our kids those skills to say, you have to look at somebody's face. You have to read their facial expression and say to yourself, I can tell Johnny feels sad. I took this from him and I can see on his face, he's crying, he's mad, his hands, whatever. I can see he feels mad. And then try to help them connect those dots. What I did made him feel that way. We cannot, especially with our young preschoolers, say things like, how do you think that made him feel? Because it's like a waste of your breath, and it's not good to waste breath, because they cannot understand the world from somebody else's vantage point. And then here's another one that really shows itself in preschool, especially at the beginning of the year, and that's in how they interact with each other. And we know that our students engage in a lot of parallel play, which means they're playing right next to each other. But if you're ever a really good observer, and hopefully we all are, you might notice that their discussions with each other are very parallel as well. Susie's talking about something, what she's doing. Jane is talking about something, and they're not really giving that back and forth, conversation, because they're really only interested in what they're doing themselves. And that's just developmentally how they are. As they get older and as we give them more experience with this, they'll start to, be able to ask questions back and forth. Do you want to play? I'll be the mom, you be the kid. But very early on in preschool, that's not the case. Their egocentrism really shows itself in the way that they converse with each other and then the way they interact with each other during play. And so things like doing show and tell with a group of 3-year-olds, is really an exercise in frustration for you and for the kids. Because to ask a group of kids, 10 or 12 3-year-olds, to sit and listen to what one kid has to say about their object, about their thing that they brought in, I would say it's next to impossible. We can teach it and we can model it, but they need to be touching. They need to be thinking about it for themselves, touching it themselves, experiencing it themselves, thinking about, do I have a thing like that? And so if you ever do have show and tell and that one kid is, sitting in the special chair sharing, the other kids are going to want to be shouting out and sharing their own experiences with that toy or with that object. They are going to have a very difficult time listening and reciprocating that conversation with the one kid. So I think the best thing to do for show and tell is to pair them up, right? Everybody just show your thing to a buddy, and that's really good practice for them listening and sharing. But to sit and have everybody listen about one kid is really difficult, just specifically due to the fact that they are so egocentric. They're always only thinking about themselves and what do I know about this? And do I have this object? Do I want that object? How am I going to get that object, right? And not really listening to what the person is telling. So anyway, those are things that we need to keep in mind when we're setting expectations for our children and when we're guiding their behavior in the classroom, that we have to model it and guide them in the right way, but to ask them to do things that are developmentally inappropriate or that are developmentally not quite where they are in terms of their cognition is really an exercise in frustration, like I said. And so we just want to be cognizant of it. The more we know, the better we can do for our kids. I have, it's not my video, a really short video that exemplifies or really is a good example of egocentrism. And it's one of the classic Piaget experiments. I forgot to leave a link, but I will go leave it in the video description, and you should just take 3 minutes and watch, because it's really eye-opening to see how children cannot see things from somebody else's point of view. So, especially early on. They get there, 5 and 6 and 7. Of course, we're expecting them to, to be a little bit more aware of other people and other people's points of view. But early on, it's not a selfish act. It's just the way their brains are. They're just really only interested in themselves and their own point of view. So I will leave the link to the video. Please take a few minutes to watch it. And thank you for joining me. We will be back tomorrow. Jem and I are also trying to make a plan for how we can do some live videos over the summer. So we would love to hear some ideas from you. We won't have like centers and that kind of stuff to share with you, but we would love to hear some ideas about what you would like to do videos about in the summer, so that we can pop in and share some ideas with you, and you can share some ideas with us. So if you have some good things that you'd love us to add to the to-do list for summer, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Thanks, you guys. I'll go back and try to read some of I couldn't read them quite as fast as they were going by when I was talking. So thank you for joining me. Have fun playing and learning with your kids, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.